just lost Frederik here. Welcome back to the World Staffing Summit and another really great leadership conversation with a great company and a great founder that I personally admire, Frederik. I hope he will be able to join us here back on stage in a moment. Just waiting for him to come back. Here he is. Hey, Frederik, welcome back.
I'm very sorry. I was just entering also as a participant, I believe, again. But yeah.
Okay, got it. No worries, no worries. Thanks, Frederik, for joining. Everyone, thank you so much for joining this session. I'm super excited for this fireside chat. As I mentioned, one of my favorite staffing brands and founders in the industry, Frederik, is joining me here today. Frederik, you've built an amazing company. I think one of the coolest staffing brands out there, and I know you've been on it for a while already, so you've seen it all probably. So I'm super excited to chat with you about the industry, chat about technology in the industry. But before we dive in, maybe you start by telling us a little bit about your journey in the industry and how you actually started Zenjob and what Zenjob is.
Well, thanks, Jan. That's a very, very warm welcome. And let me know if the audio is fine or not. Otherwise, I'm happy also to use the AirPods.
Works good.
Okay, cool. No, of course, happy to do so. We kicked off Zenjob 6 years ago here in Berlin. I am actually right now also in our office, and we are now live in Germany, in the Netherlands, and another country we are not allowed to talk about yet, but close to Europe, I would say. We are a digital on-demand staffing agency, I think you can call it. But what we are literally doing and what we were trying to change 6 years ago is that we looked at staffing, the staffing industry in general, but we were very much focused from a technology point of view. So what we said is we don't want to build a temp agency or another staffing agency, but we really want to understand what are the processes we not just want to digitize, but also automate. And we came from the idea by saying, especially when it comes to flexible work, this is not organized in a fashion that it's seamless, suitable. Yes, we got the feedback from universities, from retailers, gastronomy businesses that might make sense. And that's why we kicked it off 6 years ago. We are now around 350 people here internally at Zenjob. We're working with 30,000 talents, roughly externally 5,000 companies. And we are very happy that things are picking up and that we can hopefully change a bit, especially when it comes to flexible work, how you perceive it.
Great. Yeah, I think that's amazing. And I've been in this industry roughly the same time as you. The last 5 to 6 years, we've been experimenting with different models. Back in Austria and Vienna, we had a very similar model that we started with and pivoted to a different direction afterwards. But I totally agree. I'm getting your point where you're going, and I totally see the differentiator that you have with Zenjob compared to other players in the market. When you look at Zenjob and you look at the traditional staffing business, what would you say are maybe the 2 or 3 key differentiators, maybe both from the client's perspective, but also from a candidate's perspective?
Well, I think one aspect we were always very much focused on, especially in the beginning, was actually quality. That is not a differentiator you will find like from a startup versus a traditional staffing agency point of view, but it was always something which was important for us. That's why we also deliberately decided to go for students and later just open it up also for other talents. But I think 2 aspects which are more important when it comes to differentiation between startups and the traditional world is speed and how seamless everything is. So speed, what we can do is basically if there is a hotel or retailer around and they need staff in 15 minutes, we will be able to send staff in 15 minutes.
Wow.
Why? Just because we can have a push notification sent to over a couple of thousands of talents and they immediately can apply and work. So I think speed is something which is and was very crucial for us as a especially like door opener also to engage on the company side. But even more important, things needs to be seamless. And you asked like around talents and companies. So this is like a B2B and B2C important topic, meaning we were always focused on building a software, first of all, of course, internally to manage all of the processes, but then 2 different apps facing our talents, the B2C side, and then also building a company app to face the company side. In the end, what we have is that we have around 75-80% of our jobs running automatically through our system. That means if there is a company placing an order, we match a talent applies, there is a check and check out, there's payment, 10 to 14 different operational processes. They are all automated. No one is interfering there, no one is touching that. And I think that is in the end the big differentiator. As we entered an industry, which was like, I think the number always, also my co-founder Fritz is always referring to, was 96% paper driven. Which was completely crazy for us. And we are happy that we could change some things when it comes to a special German topic, when it comes to signatures. Crazy topic. And I hope that we were also able to build something which others can then copy and use themselves.
Cool. So, the great differentiator that I also see is obviously you guys are a pioneer when it comes to the technology and the automation and the process. I think you nailed that, because when you look at the market today, a lot of staffing companies are only starting to think of that, or only starting to add maybe another automation or another app to their existing applicant tracking system. And I think the big differentiator is that you kind of build everything from scratch with your own technology, as far as I understand, versus using legacy systems. So that gives you a great head start. But the second thing that I personally think, which is really great and important, is your brand. So I think, when you look at the brands that are in the industry today, I think incumbent players can definitely step up their game and take a look what you guys are doing. And I think the great differentiator on attracting talent and both candidates is brand. How important is that for you, and what type of focus do you put on brand also going forward?
It's very important. It's, you said it yourself, technology was and is always key. That means that we always wanted to be perceived also as a technology-driven company. The technology is really the enabler. Our product is core of the experience, again, on both sides of the marketplace, and not just a fancy add-on, basically. But at the same time, the brand itself is very important. That's why we were also trying to focus on our brand when it comes to our fairly hyper-local market. Why? Because, in the end, what we are talking about is that, especially in the beginning, when we attracted students, we are looking at universities and then the semester and then the group in the semester of friends who are basically talking around Zenjob. And we were quite proud to see that, especially in Berlin, we very quickly could adapt to a high referral rate, which in the end led to us not spending any B2C marketing. And I think that is a path we really wanted to grow on, and to establish a brand where people are proud working for, which people enjoy, which people see as an enabler, because I think for the whole staffing agency world, this is one of the challenges, right? We all want and need to be perceived as an enabler and not as something which is not seen that well, right? We also often talking to politicians, for example, national level, European Commission, but also other temp companies, and it's interesting to see how they perceive it, right? And I think this is something we want to change, because in the end, there will be always people looking to be directly engaged with one company, and that is great. And then there will be others who enjoy the flexibility to decide when to work for whom and for how what. And it doesn't mean that we need to convert all people into one group. It's just a gigantic market, and therefore there's space for everyone.
I'm just curious, what type of skill sets are currently the most common, in your network and that you're currently filling?
Well, we also needed to adapt a bit to the COVID waves we saw so far. That meant actually that with the first one, we lost around 70% of our revenues in a week. So we needed to adapt quite quickly. And I guess that is also one of the advantages we have as a digital startup. We shifted a lot to retail, for example, food retail. We all needed to buy the papers for the bathroom. Therefore, we had the drugstores, we had the pharmacies. Then there was the second wave. So we switched more to e-commerce and logistics. Then we supported in vaccination centers. And with that, basically also the skill base changed a bit of our talents. I do have to say, though, that there is still the majority of the jobs are still helping hands. And we are slowly growing now more and more in the verticals also of saying, let's say there is a startup and there is a marketing support needed, and we can supply someone helping them also then building their career and grow. But we were, first of all, always focused to say, we want to understand how the very flexible and easy work looks like, how and which kind of processes are running in the background that we can then standardize and automate. And then later later we will slowly grow. So I would say our talent pool in general is quite diverse. And they rather all needed to adapt always to our offerings also due to the pandemic.
Yeah. You mentioned one interesting thing, supporting people in their careers. I think that's also a great point with your brand. And I think that's something that other staffing agencies are really bad at, is redeployment. Do you see actually cases where you have, someone joining Zenjob maybe a couple of years ago, and now you sort of moving that person from doing retail jobs, or sort of, you mentioned the helping hand sort of skill set, to maybe more a third career path? Is that also part of the vision, to basically help people also further along as they come into your talent pool, so to say?
Absolutely. It is part of the vision, but it's also something we see already happening. Two things I would mention there. First is that we sometimes hear already from the company itself that they will say, hey, we really love that talent, or we really love that student. Is it possible also that they can work for us permanently? And we will not say in that moment like, we don't like this or anything like that, but we would rather clap and say, great, maybe even use it as a marketing story, but in general, be very supportive of that one. Because again, that is not why we don't want to tackle that business. We rather want to understand what are the people who want to work flexible. So yes, that's something we support. And then we also see that people maybe start in a certain category, but then they move up also the ladder in the companies. The second one is actually internally. So we often have talents also liking working for Zenjob, loving the brand, and then they will apply just internally at Zenjob. And we have lots of talents actually started working for Zenjob in Berlin, but also in other cities, and then in a variety of jobs, sometimes in operations, sometimes it's marketing, sometimes at legal, right? So I think there's a broad variety. And yes, part of the vision, though, is to go very much further in that direction. We believe into investing into our talents, into training, into qualifications. Actually, that also applies to every employer nowadays, right?
Yeah.
But of course, we need to do this to also showcase that you can go very far with Zenjob. And when you then decide to do something else permanently, completely fine.
Perfect. Let's shift back a little bit to technology. I had an interesting conversation with Tim Pröhm from Kelly Digital X just a couple minutes ago, and we were talking about a recruiter-less world, right? Everybody the last couple of years is talking that staffing agencies will be replaced. AI is coming in. It feels to me like this conversation is going on, and it never really happens. You mentioned that the majority of your jobs today already basically are being matched with candidates in your pool pretty much without the help of a recruiter or sourcer. How do you see that evolving in the next couple of years? Do you see the recruiter playing a role here as sort of a talent curator, or do you see the recruiter going away completely?
Well, I believe that we will see something we often see now in lots of different departments in the working world. There will be standardized processes. There are standardized processes. And those are the processes you were just talking about, curating, for example, which in the future, and maybe in the very near future, is not something we need to deal with anymore. And I also don't believe that that's the great asset of a recruiter, right? The great asset of a recruiter is to understand already in detail, how is that human being on the other side? How do they tick? And also understanding very much the hiring manager internally, understanding how do they tick, because often you have this job description and you have also the internal, I don't know, let's call it memo, where a recruiter will ask you like, what are you looking for, and so on. But then there's always so much stuff between the lines, and you just realize this by working with each other. And if you have a good recruiter, they get you and they understand already those in between lines. And I think that is exactly something we will not automate in the near future, at least, right? We all don't know what's going to happen in the distant future. But what we will automate is the curating, the high-level screening, the going through categories, scraping the net, scraping LinkedIn, and things like that to understand, okay, where is this group coming from? Because I think the pure sourcing part is not something which is a great asset of the actual recruiting process itself, but it's everything which comes after, especially when it comes to a good recruiting process itself, right? I mean, this is also something where we spend a lot of time on to understand how do we want to have our recruiting to happen, how many interviews, right? How is the experience at the interview? All of those little things. And I think that is something where the human interaction will still play a great part.
Yeah. I'm also personally interested, I know that you've been now on this for the last 5 to 6 years, what were the craziest challenges that you had, growing the company and finding your way through the market, navigating through the existing landscape and ecosystem of providers and grasping everything? Any interesting stories you can share with us?
Absolutely. I mean, there is a bigger one, which I think is probably going to be too long for this format, but we were almost bankrupt with 6 weeks left, 3 weeks left, actually. We are in the end a business started from Berlin, which we were lucky enough to find some venture capital in the beginning. And we also were always able to find some venture capital later. We raised now over 50 million. But especially in the beginning, you never really know what's going to happen tomorrow. And there were lots of things going wrong. Fundraising didn't happen. We had those 3 weeks left. It was right before Christmas. So yeah, that was personally quite a vivid time, but a very interesting and special time. If you look from a rather maybe pure business point of view, I think the three of us, we are 3 co-founders, Gian, Fritz, and myself, and we all didn't have a background in the staffing world.
Interesting.
So, right? I mean, I come more from a legal point of view. Gian has the tech background, and he co-founded 2 companies, and Fritz has a commercial view. But in the end, all 3 of us, we didn't have a background, so it's quite cocky, to come in this industry and think like, oh, we are now the young hotshots who have some technology. Is this going to work? And we had no idea. But I think in the end, this is really where you need to find your sweet spot and need to understand where do you make your bet and where do you listen to the experienced people. That is also one of the reasons why we did listen from the early beginnings, where we talked to other CEOs of well-established staffing agencies and also hired people with way more experience than we had in the industry. And I think that helped also, to push us always a little bit over those first barriers, like doing your first revenues. We were very scared of that one, or trying to understand, is that a B2B price which you can really set through? Is that too bold, not too bold? So I think in that sense, we obviously learned a lot over the time. And what we did learn maybe is, you just need to do it and need to try, need to push for it, and you will learn it anyways. People will always tell you, no, that's not going to work. Also from the customer side, right? They will say, oh no, I have lots of other staffing agencies and they can do whatever. We needed to figure it out on our own, and we failed every day. So it's all good.
Good, great learning. I totally agree with that. Also, from a customer's perspective, right? It's quite hard to get into the conversation, probably, as you have essentially a lot of competition in staffing, right? So I don't know. 25,000 companies, staffing companies in the US, I think more than 30,000 in the UK. Everybody's saying they have the best talent, right? And still you have to differentiate yourself in some shape or form. But I think you guys did a great job. And I think that also leads back to, I think, quality and brand and obviously technology. When you look at the technology today, do you, see a lot of integrations that you guys will be doing in the future with the existing ecosystem, like managed service providers and VMSs on the enterprise side? What is sort of the longer term vision on tech, more on the clients front?
Absolutely. We are actually very much looking into this right now. For example, things like shift planning tools are very relevant for us, as we are still focused on flexible work, meaning a couple of days, a couple of weeks. We do also have long-term as a product, but there is still the main focus. Therefore, it is quite essential actually for us also to be integrated in those other tools and platforms. Then on the next level, HRIS, so the internal HR systems, to understand how is that looking like. I think what we really want to achieve on the client side is that we are via an API or an SDK, a fully integrated module, basically, in the end, where you as the hiring manager or the HR manager can understand, something is going wrong here, there's someone sick, there is a vacation, or I do even have a bit of a longer term issue. Well, there's already the integration via Zenjob, where I can understand who is available, what's the skill, right? What do they do in the past? What do they want to do in the future? Yes, absolutely. I think this is going to be crucial for us, as it is for all of the other platforms, because in the end, that is something we are all looking for nowadays. We want to have it seamless, right? Everything we do needs to be integrated perfectly. I can see it myself, basically, when I'm doing something and it's not working, then you get already annoyed, basically. So I think that is obviously the same for the industry. And if we want to convince also clients that they use more flexible staff, that they use staffing agencies, then we need to offer the best product possible, and that's what's driving us in the end.
Great. And I think it comes also back to this instant gratification, right? Both for the client and also for the candidates, the differentiation that you can really give the client the option to say who is available now and not have to wait a couple days before a recruiter will find it out and call you back. I think that's the big differentiator, and I think that's what will also drive the speed in the next couple of years, because people are used to getting everything instantly now, specifically throughout COVID with examples in e-commerce, right? I think that habit will just shift over to on the B2B side as well, on the buyer side.
Yeah.
Let me I have actually two more things that I wanted to discuss with you, but maybe we dive a little bit into remote work. I'm just curious. Just mentioned before we jump on the call, you're 350 people. Suddenly COVID hit. Your revenues went down. You had to go all remote. How did you manage, and what are your secrets to making sure that the company works also with 350 people fully distributed, so to say?
The absolutely magic question. I mean, to be honest, if I remember also the days now 2 years ago, we had an all hands. That means all the team comes together at our office, and there was a Thursday, and we were talking already about COVID, and should we do something? And we were all like, no, it's gonna be fine. Let's wait. And then just overnight, from Thursday to Friday, we fully changed our strategy by getting everyone in the office on Friday, taking their things, and staying home for who knows how long, right?
Yeah.
So, I think we also needed to figure out lots of things in the last 2 years. I guess we do have an advantage as we are so young as a company, and we were running on digital processes anyway already, that it was a bit easier for us probably to adapt to the environment. On the other hand, we have a lot of people at Zenjob. They are between 20 and 35 years old. They're all looking to join the culture, to join the office, to exchange. Often, they also just go for drinks later in the night as well with their colleagues. So in the end, that was obviously devastating. I think now we are also trying to understand a bit of what are the best practices. We also don't know what the best practices are. And I can also share with you that internally, also in the management, we do have vivid conversations around the topic. Because first of all, of course, we also see a great advantage of the new era, right? And also of flexible work engagements. And also we don't see a perspective to be again for everyone 5 days in the office every week. On the other hand, though, I think we are now sometimes also a bit more extreme on the other side of things, right? We are also praying like how amazing the home office is, or working from home is, how efficient everything is. And people forget often that those little things like building the culture, having those random exchanges, being a bit creative, also maybe solving a problem, getting to know someone, that is not something you will do via Slack or Zoom or anything like that. You don't do the small chit chat in between. And I think we are very much convinced to at least get back then to a 2 to 3 days culture where you are in the office, and everyone then also should be those days in the office. But we are also very happy to learn. I think we're also looking to the big tech companies, and I think they will test probably lots of different things.
Awesome. When you look at your industry news source, where do you go for finding out what's happening in the industry? Do you read any industry articles? Do you follow any industry insiders to learn what's happening at the moment?
We have one actually, which I quite like. I think it's called Staffing Industry Analysts. It's a newsletter format, and I very often find actually news which are also very relevant for us, because I think that is often something which is lacking when it comes to newsletter formats, anything like that. Of course, on the other hand, we are always trying to exchange with other companies, whether they are startups like we are or big established companies. We're always trying to understand a bit of what's going on and what do they see as trends. But if you just ask me from pure news source, then I would mention Staffing Industry Analysts.
Any plans actually to partner with other staffing companies in some shape or form? I know the M&A market in staffing is pretty hot right now. Have you ever considered potentially acquiring or partnering with other international staffing companies to expand business in that way, or are you going purely basically on your own? I mean, you don't need to share it. Obviously, this is a very insider question, but I'm just curious to hear what maybe your high level thoughts on that are.
No, of course. I mean, what we did so far, also when it comes to international expansion, we always did it organically. So we did it on our own. And I think we also want to continue going down that path, especially because we saw already in Germany when we kicked it off how many things are there to learn, like how highly regulated also this market is. Again, we are really in a temp agency regulated business world. So in that sense, we still see this as a great asset. On the other hand, though, of course, now it makes more sense than in the past also to understand, are there other companies we would love to partner up with? And yes, I think so. I think there will be other startups or bigger companies where it makes lots of sense. I think what we will always trying to understand are two things. Is there a common culture we can bring together? And is there a common understanding of technology? And if those two factors are there, then yes, absolutely, why not?
Makes sense. When you would give someone that starts a staffing company today any advice, what would you tell them if they're starting today to think of building a recruiting or staffing business? Anything you would give them on their way?
I guess which would pop up in my mind is also what, when we looked at the market in the beginning, we were so completely amazed by how gigantic this market is. And I think that is already the danger. So I would then probably say focus. Also something we were always trying. We said we want to do students in Germany, easy money, short term. That needs to be our focus in the beginning. We are fairly broad when it comes to the verticals, but we want to keep it focused for now. And then later, let's very slowly understand what to open. So I think focus will be key because there is a niche for everyone. That's why we're not afraid of competition, and no one else should be afraid of us. It's just, I think, a gigantic market, and you need to understand what your sweet spot is, because otherwise you will fail because the market is just too big and the incumbents are too big.
Yeah, I agree, and I think I told this on a few other conversations that I had with some industry leaders, that you have to have a niche in this market. You cannot be a generalist like staffing companies have been in the past, offering everything to everyone and every skill set in every industry. You have to build a really good brand and focus to make sure that you're able to attract both your clients but also candidates and retain them. And there's a couple cool other examples also in the US. I was mentioned the Mom Project, and there's a few others that are doing a really great job building brand. And I think you guys are leading that front in the European market. So congrats to building such a great business. I'm super excited to keep following your journey, see what's gonna be around for you guys in the Netherlands with the new expansion and with other expansions into other cities. So please keep us posted. I hope we can continue the conversation in a couple of months, maybe end of the year, to check in how it's going for you guys. And Frederik, thank you so much for joining us here today. It was great having you, great conversation. I hope the audience enjoyed it. And one last thing, when people are looking for you or for Zenjob, where can they find you?
I think probably the easiest zenjob.com, otherwise LinkedIn. Also, please just write me on LinkedIn, whatever we can be helpful. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you, Frederik. Appreciate your time today, and enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you soon. And for the audience, stick around. We have great content coming up, and enjoy the rest of the conference. See you soon.
Bye-bye.